All right, can everyone hear us?
Oh, yes. Now.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody, and sorry about that. We are excited today to be hosting an Election 2016 webinar. This is PWN Vote, winning on #HIV and the #Election 2016. So thank you everybody for joining us. So today we're going to be joined by some really great presenters, but we also want to set the framing for this important conversation ahead of the election cycle or in the current election cycle that's currently taking place. So my name is Arnita Rogers, and I'm the Policy and Advocacy Manager here at Positive Women's Network USA, and we're going to be receiving a few welcoming words from our Executive Director and Fearless Leader, Nana Khanna. So Nana, if you want to take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Arnita, and thank you to our fabulous presenters today. I know we have a great lineup for you. I'm Nana Khanna, Executive Director of Positive Women's Network USA, and we are so excited to be bringing you this webinar to ensure that HIV really is at the forefront of the local, state, and national conversation during this critical election cycle. I'm sure all of us are very clear about what's at stake here, and there's so much, not just even though the presidential election is sort of dominating the news, there are so many ways to have an impact, particularly in local and state level races, on issues that impact the everyday lives of people living with HIV. And we know that a lot of our members, a lot of our constituency are already engaged in election work. And so part of what we wanted to do is also have an opportunity to kind of uplift and discuss the ways that the HIV community is already engaged in the electoral process and what some strategies might be to elevate issues related to HIV, health justice, and many of the other issues that intersect with our policy agenda and our platform throughout this election cycle. An election cycle can really be a fantastic time to raise issues to the forefront that might not have been on the minds of some candidates running for office. So while the broader community and the general public might be kind of like, HIV, isn't that sort of done or gone away? Everything from like local candidate forums to mayoral races to district attorney discussions provides an opportunity for us to kind of like uplift critical issues from HIV criminalization to funding for access to care and prevention. And so we really wanted to have a chance to engage with all of you around that discussion. There is some feedback from whoever just joined. I just went ahead and muted a line. So again, I want to really thank all of our presenters. I know we have a fabulous lineup of folks. We have Forward Together, which is doing incredible work around reproductive justice and kind of like uplifting a whole reproductive justice agenda in the election cycle and beyond. And we have a number of fantastic PWNers and the newest member of our PWN staff team, Cami Dodson, who's been working to create some tools and resources that will be useful to our members, our chapters, and our allies. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to Arnita. Thank you all so much.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nana. Great. Okay, so today I'm really excited to introduce some fabulous presenters that are going to bring their expertise as we talk about this election cycle and the important issues that Nana was talking about. And I'll just provide a brief agenda overview before we get started. So I'm really happy and excited that we have Dalia Rubiano Yedidia from Forward Together, who will be talking about how to raise issues and in the form of candidate questionnaires. Next, we'll have a presentation from Tammy Hopp from the Zero Project, who is a fearless advocate around HIV criminalization, and also a fearless bird dogger. So she's going to be talking about that as a tactic to also raise issues for candidates and the community. And next, we're going to hear from Pat Clark from PWN Michigan, who is running for office for the Kalamazoo County Commission. So she's going to talk about the experience of being, in a campaign, and then we will hear from our own Lauren Jones from PWN USA Bay Area, PWN board member, who will be talking about her experience as a longtime poll worker and what that is like. And then next, we will have a presentation from our brand new legal fellow who is making her debut on the webinar scene. Today she's going to be talking about a toolkit that we are producing here at PWN to provide different resources around getting out the vote, researching policy issues, researching candidates, and really making sure that everybody is primed and ready to really leverage their vote in this election cycle. And so after the completion and all of the presentations, we'll have a moderated Q&A, which I will be opening up the chat box and the line for questions that you have. Feel free to chime in along the way with your comments as the presenters share their expertise, and ready to get going. So without further ado, I want to make sure we connect the beautiful faces with the names of the presenters I've just shared here. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dalia from Forward Together.
Thanks, Arnita. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting us to be a part of this great webinar. Again, my name is Dalia, and I'm the Movement Building Manager here at Forward Together. So a little bit about who we are. I work for Forward Together. We're a national organization based here in Oakland, California. We use art and culture shift and policy change in all of our strategies. And we work so that all families can thrive. We work at the intersection of race, gender, and sexuality. Some of our Forward Together projects include Echoing Ida and Strong Families and Mama's Day. So many folks know us through Strong Families, which Positive Women's Network is a Strong Families partner, which is awesome. It's our national network of more than 180 organizations. It's cross-sector, and all of the organizations that are part of the Strong Families Network are working in different ways at the intersection of race, gender, and sexuality at totally diverse strategies and different levels. So we have like local grassroots organizing groups. We have big kind of national policy wonk groups. We have direct service, advocacy, everything in between. And so today I'm going to focus a little bit on the way that we, what our analysis of what civic engagement can really look like and what is useful for us and our communities given that it is an election year. Our overall, we're a cross-sector network, but overall, in the last few years and this year, we're really focusing on reproductive justice, economic justice, and ending mass incarceration. So that's a little bit about who we are. And I'm just going to share, just for framing, for our work, and it definitely sounds like for the other fabulous presenters as well, we really see a broad definition of civic engagement as necessary to move our movements forward. We see anything qualifying as civic engagement as what shortens the distance between policymakers and the communities that the decisions they make affect. So that means that it's year-round, right? We're all too familiar with outside forces helicoptering into our communities between Labor Day and the election and then disappearing the day after the election, right? And that's what, quote, civic engagement has often looked like for many of us. And so we really don't believe that is effective, and nor does it actually change the conditions that we're living in. And so for us, civic engagement definitely includes voting, but it's also attending a neighborhood or school board meeting, it's being a poll worker, it's running for office, it's meeting with an elected, it's pushing for legislation. All of those things are shortening the distance between decision makers and the communities that they affect. Given that it is an election year, as we all, of course, know, and we believe in harnessing the momentum and resources that come with national elections. So with that, here you can see, if you're on the computer, some photos of our different Canvas teams. One of our Forward Together projects is also a state-based action site in New Mexico. So we have a couple photos of our Strong Families New Mexico canvassers who are from the communities, the rural communities that they are canvassing in, reaching new and infrequent voters, mainly Chicano, Latino, and Native voters in New Mexico. And then we also have a couple photos from other Strong Families partners, Montana Women Vote, who work with low-income women in Montana and Women Engaged in Atlanta. Now I'm going to share a little bit about a tool that we created this year that we really hope can center issues that actually impact our families within the elections and with what candidates tend to not talk about. So we created a tool called Lifting Economic Policies that Support All Families. It's C3 friendly, and it's really we aim for it to be used for anyone who will be interacting with candidates at all, using a race, gender, and sexuality framework. And so we created this tool for together with 8 national partners. And we know that during an election this year, just like any other year, the economy becomes a massive issue. But we also know that the way that candidates talk about the economy aims to mobilize voters on particular economic issues, and those voters are generally white and middle-class voters. So what we hope to do with this tool was really lift up economic policies that actually impact our families, so families of color, low-income families, queer families, et cetera, and really being able to talk to candidates about those issues. So a little bit about the candidate questionnaire. It's open, it's free, it's online. You can find it at forwardtogether.org. We would love for it to support any of the work that Positive Women's Network or other groups are doing. And so the areas of questions, we came to them, we determined what we wanted to focus on based on the priorities of what Forward Together and our 8 national partners are working on. So of course we want this to help us build our base throughout the year, right, and within our larger movement building work beyond the elections. And so you can see here that the areas of the questions are issue areas that actually impact our families, like minimum wage, like ban the box, scheduling transparency. It's rare that we'll hear a candidate talk specifically about scheduling transparency and that the importance of that, particularly for women of color, right, who are working in retail, in restaurants, and when their schedule changes, we know how much it can impact childcare, family, ability to go to school, et cetera. And so we've created these areas of questions so that we can really ask hard and important questions. Oh, yes, I see a great question, speaking of, in the chat box around what C3 friendly means. So thank you so much. There's so much jargon, and this is really important to illuminate. So as a nonprofit at Forward Together, we're a 501c3, so sometimes that gets abbreviated to just C3. And what that means is that there are specific laws that dictate the ways that we can engage in elections, in politics, and in advocacy. And so since this tool is C3 friendly, that means that for those of us who aren't a PAC, so who don't have a big set of money or a different tax code that can allow us to give money to candidates and all of that kind of thing, this tool is friendly for any nonprofit. That being said, if you decide to use it, we definitely encourage you to speak with your legal counsel. If you work with Positive Women's Network, definitely talk to Nana and Arnita. But this has all been vetted by lawyers, and so for us, Forward Together, we're proud to be using it this year in all of our voter outreach and engagement. And we can talk more about that in the Q&A as needed. Thanks so much for that question. So one more thing about the areas of the questions is we have heard, with this election, some candidates talking about the importance of paid sick days and paid family and medical leave. And yeah, we see that as important. But what we really want this tool to do and our work in pushing candidates to answer hard questions is really talking about how would those policies actually impact our families. And one of our contributions that we've been working with Family Values at Work and A Better Balance on is having an expansive definition of family. So what that would mean is for paid sick days or paid family and medical leave was that family would be defined by blood or affinity. And that's actually how it's defined at the federal level. And blood or affinity is really it's a beautiful kind of gold star standard because it ensures that all families can access these protections like paid sick days if passed, right? It would protect queer families. It would protect immigrant mixed status families, intergenerational families, families with formerly incarcerated loved ones or other barriers to legal custody. And so we really want to make sure that if folks are pro paid sick days or paid family and medical leave, that the actual definition of family within that legislation would actually impact our families so that we could exercise those protections. So as I started to talk about before, this tool is designed for those of us who have particular limits in terms of the amount of elections work that we can do, but it can also be used by other organizations like 501c4s, labor unions, folks who actually endorse candidates. And so, here it kind of lays out the importance of talking to legal counsel if you're planning on using it for your electoral outreach plan, but we just want to, make sure that it's clear that we have had this vetted by legal experts and really want this to be a tool and resource for all of our Strong Families partners. And so, if folks are interested in using this tool, again, you can find it for free online. We're also happy to send it out to folks. And we also want to encourage people to adapt it, to use it to ask specific questions that might be impacting local elections wherever you live, that might have be specific towards the communities that you work within, maybe with additional stats about women living with HIV and AIDS. And so we want this to serve as a base. And if folks want to adapt it and add more questions for their own questionnaires, for their own when they're talking to candidates, right, you feel free to use the questions that are here, and they're all cited. So, that can be important sometimes when talking to candidates. They want to know, well, what are the facts? And so we do have everything is cited in endnotes, which can make it helpful when you're on your feet talking to someone. And so before I close, I'll just add that we also have other civic engagement, specific voter outreach tools available. So if you do live in the states of Oregon, Montana, California, New Mexico, Texas, Georgia, Florida, or Virginia, we have free Who's Who in Politics guides, again, on our website. And so these are really awesome basic political education tools to talk to our members and our base around who is the school board commissioner and how do her decisions affect my kid's life. And so you feel free to use those. All of the issue areas that are highlighted within these guides are worked on in partnership with our Strong Families partners that are on the ground there. So thank you again so much for inviting us to be here, and I look forward to hearing from the next presenters.
This is great. Thank you so much, Dahlia. And these resources that you provided and shared are also really excellent. I've had the pleasure of looking through some of them, and they're really accessible, and they really kind of just break everything down to let people know, who are these people, some of these offices that you just don't think about and what they do and how they impact your life. So this is really great. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for your presentation. Okay. Next up, we have Tammy Hawk from the Cero Project, and she's going to be talking about issue elevation and bird dogging candidates. So Tammy, please take it away.
All right. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So I am excited about this webinar, and thank you for inviting me to participate. I guess I started advocating in 2005 when Iowa had our first ADAP waiting list, and so my advocacy has just grown from there. In 2007 is the first year that I bird dogged presidential candidates. And just to give a definition, bird dogging is not anything about hunting with a dog. It is defined as to observe, follow, monitor, and or seek out with persistent attention. And that is what we did in 2007 in Iowa. Advocates around the state started talking with presidential candidates at different forums about an HIV/AIDS strategy. Many of you might know Larry Frampton, Cowboy Larry. He was living in Iowa at the time, and he went to a forum and asked Senator Edwards, who was running for president that year, when he was going to have a national HIV/AIDS strategy on his website. The following day, Senator Edwards was in my area in northern Iowa, and I asked the same question. So basically, that is what bird dogging is, and we were successful at that time because within a couple of weeks, Senator Edwards had HIV/AIDS strategy on his website. So that is when I started bird dogging. So it's just activists who seek out candidates, ask specific questions, and record and share the answer. So that's the other key point is you want to find a forum, either, and we have so many now with Facebook, that if you get an answer from a candidate, it's to post that. So whoever is in the state where the candidate might be next, they will know what the candidate said the day before or 2 days before, and they can hold them accountable the following days and at the next event. So steps for bird dogging is stalking the candidate a bit, and that's where you find out where they're going to be. You try to get, like I said, Larry talked with Senator Edwards in Des Moines, and then I waited the following day when he was in northeast Iowa and asked the same question there. So it's a team effort to try to get change and to get the candidates on record. So a team is nothing without a plan. We work together throughout the state. Early bird gets the worm. When you are doing bird dogging events, you want to arrive at the events early, depending on the candidate and how many supporters they will have. At least an hour. Some of the lesser known or popular candidates, you don't have to be there quite so early because they don't attract as many people, but you want to be there early so that you can get the good seating. You want to be in front so that you can make eye contact with the candidate, and also that they see you when it's time to ask the question. Then you want to get your 15 minutes of fame is how it's worded here. And that's where you get them on the record and you share that information. Then you also, with presidential candidates, there is a media that follows them, and sometimes you need to be prepared because sometimes the media will ask you about the question that you asked the candidate. And so there's another way to get your issue in forefront in the media as well when they follow up. And then, like I said, you share it with the class. So that's when you share on social media to let people know the answer that you got, the question that you asked, so that people in the next state or the next city will know the answer that was given, or if an answer wasn't given, so that they can ask it again. And once the candidate hears the same question a couple of times, they really start to think, oh, maybe I need to know this. And in Iowa, it was especially true because candidates expect Iowans to ask about ethanol or corn or pigs or things like that. So when we were asking questions about HIV/AIDS, you can really see their wheels going, wait a minute, I didn't plan on asking didn't plan on having to have an answer for HIV/AIDS in Iowa. So we made them think and actually get answers for us. So the big thing is don't be afraid or intimidated. Remember, the candidates, they are actually, this is their job interview. They are supposed to work for us. So that's how you need to go in there is, that you want to work for me. So I have the right to ask you this question, and I'm not going to be afraid to ask that. Breaking through the stereotypes. as you see in most of these pictures, I take my family with me. So one, in Iowa, the last thing that candidates expect to be asked is about HIV/AIDS. But then, especially Adrian, anyone who knows, I drugged my son with me because they certainly, it broke stereotypes automatically, being a woman living with HIV asking a question, but then being a mother with HIV and showing that I have the family backing. The bottom picture here is a sort of like, rather than a business card, I made up this and said HIV/AIDS funding saves lives and families. Just a reminder that, we have families, we have people who care about us, we're not alone. The other thing that you want to do is get your posse. You want to go with as many people as you can, family members. Kids are wonderful because all politicians love to have their picture taken with kids. But you want to have as many people with you as you can. In the top right corner is a picture of chain advocates when we went to the Day on the Hill. The bottom picture is of Colorado. That's Barb Cardell and Carrie Hartel and all the rest of the Colorado advocates who worked so hard in Colorado to get their HIV-specific law modernized this year. So you have to have allies going with you. And the big thing that I always say is share your story and leave your fact sheet. So candidates will remember your story more than they will a fact. So this is this year when I went bird dogging presidential candidates, I took a picture of Adrian graduating from high school, and my it's just a little thing that I use to get their attention and get them to stop and talk to me for the 30 seconds to a minute that you have. And so I had them all sign that. It was, I asked them, I said, I wasn't supposed to live long enough to see my son graduate. This is how things have changed, and the bottom is the thing, the messages from Hillary Rodham Clinton and Bill Clinton. So it was exciting. And you need to use things like that to catch their attention because they're so used to just questions. So anything unique that you can give them. And I say leave your fact sheet because that means they have to look at it at least twice. Once when you hand it to them, and the second time when they throw it away. And hopefully in between one of those times out, they'll at least glance through it and hopefully see. But they will remember your story longer than they will any facts, because they have so many facts thrown at them. And I also encourage people to write down your ask before you attend the event. Sometimes, and I do it all the time too, you'll have a brain fart once it's time for you to ask a question. So if you have it written down, then you can read it off, and there's nothing wrong with that because they realize people get nervous talking and speaking in front of a group of people. So I wanted to share this information here. If you want to know different facts about asks that we asked for AIDS Watch 2016, and I'm sure in 2017 many of these same issues will be brought up. You can find the information in the fact sheet at AIDSunited.org, and if you go to under their policy and advocacy tab, and then under the AIDS Watch tab, and then there's the fact sheets, and they have different fact sheets on all of the information. So when you're going, I'm not sure what to ask and what issues, go to this website, and there are the fact sheets that you can share with them, and it also gives you clear talking points to give you an idea of what is the key components or what the key questions to ask. And the most important thing is be persistent, be a persistent advocate because change can happen. In 2014, Iowa significantly got our law modernized, and this is Governor Branstad signing the bill to modernize our HIV-specific laws. And then in 2016, the wonderful advocates in Colorado were also able to make a difference and make change in their state. So change can happen, but you do have to be very persistent. It's not easy, and it does take several years. the last thing that I'll leave you with is, it took us 9 years to modernize our HIV-specific law in Iowa. And, like year 6 into it, we finally, after our bill was killed in committee, we asked the legislators who didn't vote for our bill, why didn't you vote for it? And they said the key reason was because nobody in their district asked them to vote for it or talk to them about the importance of modernizing the law. So it's key that every legislator needs to be educated about the issue, and it's key that we talk to every legislator, because if they don't hear from somebody in their district, if it's not something that's top on their radar, they may not vote for it. So we have to ask. Okay, and I will let Arnita take away the polling question.
Sure, just give me 1 minute. We're in downtown Oakland, and of course, we got the sirens in the background for our ambiance. Hold on just a second. I'm going to get the poll ready to share with you guys.
Okay. Well, and while you're doing that, I can quick answer. I see Ashley asked, do you record yourself with the candidate? There's a two-person approach. That, now we have the ability to do that. Almost everyone has a cell phone. So, and this is where having your posse, if you have somebody else going with you, I suggest that you don't sit right by each other, because very rarely do they ever ask two people sitting by each other for a question. But that way, the other person can also record your question and the candidate as well, which, is key to success as well. Good question.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tammy. All right, so I'm going to open a poll to see the important question that Tammy wanted to ask is that, have you talked to your state legislators? So I'm going to start the voting now. You can go ahead and submit your vote, and we'll see what your responses are. You have a choice of yes, I have them on speed dial, no, never, and I would if I knew how to reach them. So let's see. Okay, just a few more seconds. All right, and it looks really promising that the overwhelming majority of folks say that they have their legislators on speed dial, so that's great. That's good to know that we are being persistent and we're communicating with our legislators. We had a few people say that no, never, or one person say no, never, and then a couple of people say that they would if they knew how to reach them. And so we're hoping that we can share some resources with you today that if you're wanting to get in touch with your legislators, especially around this election season, that you'll be being able to know how to do that. So thank you, Tammy. Thank you for a really great presentation. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Tammy?
No, that's it. And just for those who I'm not sure how to reach them, if you Google like Iowa, I would just type in Iowa legislature, and then it will bring up the state legislative page, and you can usually just type in your zip code, and it will bring up who your legislators are. That's a fast way to learn who is your state senator and representative.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. All right. So next up, we'll hear from Pat Clark from PWN Michigan, and she's going to talk about her experience running for office. So she might be somebody that you guys want to get in touch with and have on speed dial. So, Pat, if you want to take it away.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Nana, and thanks for inviting me to participate. So this election year is a particularly exciting and kind of scary election year. And so I wanted to, first of all, talk about the reason, like why I ran. Why do I run? Or why should you consider running? I think that the most important thing was what I guess I used to always think, I better preface this though. I am an elected official now at the village I live in a village of Climax, and I'm a trustee on the board there, the council, since 2012. And I went there initially because, they needed somebody to fill a slot, and it's a small little village, and it had been in the little local newspaper, over and over, and I thought, this could be fun, this could be something interesting. But what I had always thought was that people who govern us, so the legislators, even at that level, or where I'm running at the county level, I always thought that those people, they must have, more skills and more knowledge and more savvy about issues and politics than other people, and that's why they're in that position. So in my experience, I have found out that's just absolutely not true, and that the people that I see even on the county level, even higher up at the state level, they're kind of like they mirror the people that we work with. They mirror the people in our neighborhood. There are absolutely people who are sharp and have skills but they aren't so many. And there are people who are big blowhards who love to hear themselves talk, and will talk and talk and talk and talk and make statements that you're kind of like, wait, is that true? I don't know if that's true. But they just keep on talking, and so you never get a chance to question. And then you have people that are just plain kind of there, and they don't really participate or do anything. So once I got involved at the village level and got to got a little bit more comfortable with things like Robert's rules and meetings and things of that nature, I started taking a look and being more active and participating more, because I found that sometimes the work that I've done in my own home that I've had to do also impacts the work, services that the village was offering. So that it's not some lofty goal to be running for an office. You and I and all the women on this call could most definitely and probably do a much better job than many of their counterparts right now. So that's the first thing about why you should run. The second, really important, and especially, during this election year, is that this is like an opportunity to advance issues and the important things that are important to myself or important to other women. I can bring those to the forefront as an elected official, because basically what elected officials do is they're kind of like managing the budget for the village. They're managing the services of the village. They manage, kind of supervise the employees of whatever level of government. And guess what? Any of us that have a family and live at home, we do all that. Most of us manage our money, and money's so tight, we know how to cut corners. We know what's important. We help our kids. We supervise our kids. And so we also, talk about the services, like what are important. At the county level, where I'm running for the county level, it's just the same thing in a much bigger arena. And right now I serve on the Community Action Tripartite Advisory Board. So it's like citizens and stuff that help guide the Community Action Agency. And the CAA, they are the ones that are the kind of safety net, and they offer the services for folks in the community who are most vulnerable, people in poverty, people are seniors who really need the services. And it's there that I really started working with county commissioners and realized that I could do this. I can bring some skills to the table that would be useful. I know that in my mind and for myself and for a lot of folks that the important issues, for instance, the Community Action Agency, there's a lack of money for the administrative staff so that they can get enough adequate administrative staff who do the intakes, who do process the paperwork for the people that are looking for financial assistance for their rent or for utilities. And what that does is causing delays and barriers to the services for those in the community that really need them the most. What I found out was that it takes one person on the board of commissioners to advocate and say, look, I really think this is important. I think that at the county level we can support this. We can spend the money. We can utilize general fund. We can put it, part of the administration, and we can make that happen, which totally frees up and causes the delivery of services to happen so much more easily. And I thought, holy Moses, if there's anything I can do, it's be an uber advocate, and that's what, when you're an elected official, that's kind of what you are. We talk about what do they do? We're responsible for the budget. We are supervised the county, like the administration. So that's all the services that the county provides from, like I said, the Community Action Agency, Aeronautics Board, Animal Services, Transportation Authority, Corrections, Community Mental Health and Substance Abuse, Land Bank, Public Housing. I am appalled that at our county level, it is talked about, and it is more important to advance and work on the airport, our little tiny airport, than it is to address the mental health and substance abuse needs in this Kalamazoo County. And that's where I feel like I can, where I need to step up and make an impact. So I guess my experience has been, anyone can do it. It wasn't so much so that I couldn't, I can't do that. Oh my gosh, we can do this. We can do this. We are the leaders. We're the leaders in our family. We're the leaders in our church. We're the leaders in our communities. We can do this, and we should, because people need us to be out there and need us to be, like I say, bringing these issues to the forefront and being the advocates for the important things that are important that often get overlooked. So, yes, that's all I've got.
That's great. Thank you so much, Pat. That was really great. And I definitely know much more about what a county commissioner does after this presentation, and definitely solidifying the fact that we are the subject matter experts on our communities, and so we are the best people for these positions, and we can do it. So thank you for that. All right. Next up, we have Lauren Jones. She's going to tell us about her experience in doing poll work, election work, and being an all-around awesome advocate. Thank you, Lauren.
Hi, good morning. I am Lauren Jones. I am part of PWN USA, and I'm also unemployed, which is one reason why I'm a poll worker, and I admit to that. And that's an important fact, because you will notice that most of the people that actually are sitting behind the tables on election date, helping you, work the voting machine if you have them, are actually people that have no other source of income, or probably they would not be there for an at least 12 to 16-hour day. So that's one issue. That was my initial reason for working at the polls, because it is a position that's actually fairly easy to get, at least in my area. And I should tell you that I do live in Berkeley, California, which is a part of the Alameda County and San Francisco Bay Area in California. So poll worker jobs are pretty easy to get. All you need to do is actually apply for it, say that you're going to be available for that long day, as well as being available for 2-hour training a couple of weeks before the vote. And you'll probably get the job. It's that easy. I think the harder part is after you actually get there. Our day does start at 6 in the morning. The polls open at 7. So that means that you do have to be set up, and that includes your hard copy material, as well as there's a little bit of mechanical skill that's necessary for some people, but actually that's what some people enjoy. So it's good to have a varied group of people that you're working with. I used to have a friend that was a mechanic that I always tried to make sure that he was on my team, because he liked to tinker with all the funny little things that come with setting up the voting machines and that kind of thing so that they work properly. So gradually I evolved into a change in my reasonings for why I do this, because I do consider voting to be very important. I am in the main an activist, which means that I started out as an activist on the streets, carrying signs, just generally harassing. We were a little past bird dogging into downright harassing our representatives around what we wanted them to do, locally as well as statewide and nationally. So as one becomes more and more involved in getting your issues recognized and getting the results and the change that you want, it eventually came to me that the bottom line is that sign carrying in and of itself and marches and that kind of thing are wonderful. It gets the issues out there. It can reach people with the facts. But in the end, if people don't vote, then a lot of that work and effort has really gone down the drain. We have to reach the people who make the ultimate decisions and who actually do have the ultimate say in making the changes in our lives. So my part of the presentation is how can we make it easier to encourage people to come out and take that ultimate last step in getting their issue heard and getting the changes that they want? And how do we remove barriers that are there for a lot of the people that we want to represent and that we want to make changes for? I do live in a mostly, it's actually a varied area. There are quite a few students in my area who are voting for the first time. I do live about a block away from the University of California at Berkeley, so that means that we have people coming in, especially for a November vote, that are actually coming from out of town in other states. And, one of the things that can be a barrier, and very often is, that our rules, regulations, and laws are definitely different from state to state. And the first thing that you need to know, which was reflected in our poll question, was if you don't know who your representative is, then you probably have not called them, written them, or have any idea of what their stand is on the issues that you care about. And so one of the things that I thought it was important to put in here is, how do you find out who your congressional representative is and who your 2 senators are? And it turns out actually to be very easy. There is, of course, a website and a link. And the link is www.whoismyrepresentative.com. And that makes it possible for you to call or write to find out not only where your representative stands, but also it'd be interesting to find out who are they endorsing for other offices. and where do they stand on the issues that are most important to you. And this actually, calling and writing does give you a chance to control that even more than if you're in person, because I have found that if you call your representative, you probably will not talk to that actual person. You know, I don't think I've ever called or written and directly spoken to Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who is a representative for my district, but you will speak to an aide, and that person will write down your question or concern, and that person will also write down what your stand is on that issue. So to prepare people for the actual step of voting, there are some things that they can do ahead of time that will help them decide who to vote for. So, again, you do want to petition. This is also a pre-step to voting, to remove any barriers that might make it harder to vote. If you think, you know, even though it probably is too late for this upcoming election, but certainly for the next elections in the future, if there are issues in your area, in your county or your district or your state that make it harder for people to vote, like issues around whether or not they have identification and that kind of thing, if there are age issues, any issue that's there that you feel is a barrier to people coming out to vote, because I think they're probably going to be turned away, we should immediately start working on those issues and how to remove them. Can I have the next slide? So, information is power. Definitely, and definitely election time is the time, it's the time to study up, you know, because I think, you know, we should, you know, all be aware, and it should be obvious, especially in the election season that we're coming into. A lot of things get said, and a lot of things, you know, we can even change what we say from day to day, you know, so it is up to us as the voters to read up, keep on top of it. In something, you know, the more exciting races we tend to pay attention to, like the ones at the top, like votes for governors, presidents, congresspeople, all of that. But, you know, what we really also need to pay attention to is the little boring things that go on from place to place, from county to county and district to district. I think a lot of that, and particularly the language that's used, you know, to write initiatives and that thing, can make it hard for us to want to stay engaged. Even those of us that are, you know, like political nerds, geeks, or whatever you want to call it. You know, there's some stuff like, do I personally care about a new water tanks being built as long as when I turn on my faucet, the water is running? Probably I should be, but I'm just like everybody else on a day-to-day basis. I'm probably not. But what we do need to do is realize that we are responsible for the large things as well as the small things. It's our responsibility whether or not we have clean water, and if you can find out the information, because that is definitely a barrier for a lot of people. You know, a lot of times people don't feel confident to make a decision because they really don't have the information, or the information really is not that easy to access. But anything that we can do to give information out there about any issue is actually important. You know, for myself, I live in a full world. I am not just an advocate around one issue. You know, all of them impact me. So I think we need to allow safe spaces for people to discuss what their issues are. Of course, we're going to push and plug for our issue, but we realize that in order to get people to come to the polls to vote, they need to know that people are interested in all of who they are and all of what their issues might be. So, but the most important thing is to make sure that everybody in your area knows when the vote is going to take place and where they go to vote. They need to know who their representative is. They need to know there are deadlines when information comes out. Like I've made it, a point to actually write down like when the voting pamphlets are coming out in my area. Like I do happen to know that for my area, it's going to be on September 29th. And that I could probably walk into the library or definitely probably City Hall, or for people that have voted previously, you usually receive that information in the mail. So some of that will come out in different places the end of this month. People need to know that areas where they can vote by mail, because that's a huge barrier that you can, help remove for people. People that are busy, people that have children, people that have, high-powered lives or whatever may feel like, well, I just can't get there on that specific day at a time when the polls are still open. If you get your ballot by mail, then you'll be able to mail it in ahead of time, and it's just as long as it's at your registrar of voters' main office, and that address will be on the vote by mail envelope. Then, you can vote, a couple of weeks ahead of time and know that your vote will be counted by midnight on that night. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. You can work with, and getting out the vote is not something that you need to take on as an individual. This is a good time to practice coalition work. There are all kinds of groups out there that are working specifically to get out the vote. You can work to get out the vote by party. You can work to get out the vote around specific candidate. Or, I take out voter registration cards to my various meetings, just because I work mostly with low-income people who have the hardest time feeling that their vote is essential or important. I just want people to go do it. Just go vote. Like it's easier to get more people to come out for like a presidential election where there's more to be excited about one way or another. But voting's like anything else. If you practice, it gets easier to want to do it, want to be there, want to read the stuff. It becomes more and more important to you to be engaged in that. So we want to always encourage people to vote, work with people to get out the vote for both large elections and small ones. If you have a way of helping people get transportation to the polls, and I live in an urban area, so, there are probably almost more polling places than we need sometimes. However, I am well aware that once you get out of the major inner city, it becomes much more difficult. Or if you have someone with mobility issues and that kind of thing, you're not just talking about walking around the corner or a block or two. So sometimes it may be possible to provide like little caravans or vans to take people literally to the polling places. We can use social media, since we use it for everything else, we can use social media to let people know when voter registration deadlines are, say, in a given area, where polling places are in a given area. We can help make this information accessible and easier to obtain. We could even do Twitter storms on election day and let people know not just to come out and vote for a specific candidate, but what time do the polls close? And as a poll worker, I'd appreciate that. It's 7:00. If you're gonna vote, you really need to get on the road and get there before it closes. We are the ones who need to know the registration deadlines, and we also want, again, encourage people to vote by mail. So let me see. Okay, so that's basically it. I encourage people to come out and work at the polls. You definitely won't be doing it for the money, because if there is any money in your area, trust me, it won't be close to what you need for a 16 to 20 hour day. So be polite. I think, despite what you always see in the videos of poll workers, of everybody looking so stoic, so serious, that's another thing that discourages people. It's not that bad. People enjoy getting their little I voted sticker and that kind of thing. So you could even be cheerful. It'll make your day a lot shorter and a lot more pleasant for everybody that's in the area. Make sure that you know all the voting laws and regulations in your specific area, because unfortunately they are different from state to state. But feel good about yourself for helping to facilitate the vote. Let's make it easier, not harder.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That was excellent, an excellent overview of everything from your experience at the polls to connecting people doing direct action to, elevating those issues with the vote. So one question that you thought was important to ask was what are the barriers, if any, to voting that you see in your local area? So people, if you have barriers that you see in your community, feel free to chime in on the chat box. And there's already been some really great discussion around people that are organizing get out the vote efforts and trying to reach people that might have issues having ID as a barrier. I think that was what Naima was saying in the chat box. So if you have other barriers, please feel free to chime in on the chat box. We're developing a toolkit to help get around some of these barriers and to reach our community members that might face the barriers that Cammie is going to be talking about in our next presentation. So this is a really excellent segue, and great job. That was an excellent presentation. Okay. Okay, yes, Cammie is saying weather can be a barrier that we don't even think about. In Iowa, we probably don't think about here in the Bay Area. So, yes, rural transportation is another issue and how to get to the polls, definitely. Yeah, thank you. Feel free to keep chiming in. All right, and without that, I'll turn it over to Cammie Dotson, our new legal fellow here at PWN. Take it away, Cammie.
Thank you, Arnita. Hi, everyone. I'm Cammie. Thanks again for joining us on this webinar. I'm the new Reproductive Justice Fellow at PWN. It's really exciting to hear about all the different ways PWN members are engaging in the issues locally and nationally this year, and thinking about how PWN members really come from so many different communities across the country, so many diverse areas. We wanted to provide some sort of toolkit that would provide some resources for all the different aspects of voting, elevating the issues, making it easier for you and your allies to really engage with candidates and know what's going on this year, and really amplify the voices of women living with HIV. So, as many of you know, there's a lot of tools out there. Everything is online these days. There's tons of websites about voting. So we just wanted to try to streamline it into one sort of user-friendly resource. And so what we're doing is we're putting that online on the PWN website, and it's going to have 4 different parts. The first part is, like Lauren was talking about, just knowing how to register to vote, when you have to do it. You don't want to miss the deadlines. And, having that information for your area at your fingertips so that you can communicate it with your community as well. Oh, and thank you to the folks on the chat who are welcoming me. Happy to be here. And so that's the first part. And then we'll have another section that talks about how do you engage with the candidate. So like Lauren was talking about, tools for finding a representative. Or like Dahlia was talking about, the resources that they have at Forward Together that really help you look more closely at local issues. And then we'll have part 3, issue elevation tactics, which is really focusing on how do you use strategies to really elevate the issues that matter to you and your community. So bird dogging that Tammy was talking about is one great strategy. And then finally, the last part will be getting out the vote. How do you actually encourage others to get out there? How do you break down the barriers that some people might face in actually going and casting their vote? And I also wanted to acknowledge that not everyone is able to vote due to different legal barriers in their state, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a role in this election and a role in getting out the issues and making sure that people are really aware of what's going on in their area and how they can be involved. so that there really is a role for everyone in this, even if you aren't able to vote yourself. So just looking a little bit more closely at the different sections, Part 1, we'll have links there to different websites you can use to find the rules and requirements in your state. There's even some tips if you really want to be an overachiever and do your own voter registration drive. There's some resources out there for that. And then strategies for making voting more accessible. So thinking about considerations like weather and transportation, how can you help people connect with things like absentee ballots, where they can vote by mail and don't actually have to physically go anywhere to cast their vote. And we also have a few resources from places that have information about things like voting with a disability and how to access accommodations around that. There's also a lot of myths around people who have criminal records being not allowed to vote, where actually it's quite different in all the different states. So we wanted to make sure that people have access to that information, and you can find out what the laws are in your state. We also have a few resources that have to do with if you don't have a permanent address, how you can help people register to vote and make their vote count anyways. And we also wanted to note that there may be different safety considerations to think about, especially if you're supporting others to get registered to vote. Information like your address when you sign up to vote is a public record in a lot of places. So we wanted to make sure we highlighted some resources on the possibility of keeping your address confidential if you have safety concerns around that. And then, of course, contacting your local election officials, whether that's, to harass them or do a little bird dogging, or just get more information about how to vote or how to register in your area. That's Part 1, all the things you need to know to get ready. And then Part 2 will be more information on resources, how you can find out who your candidates are, look at what the issues are coming up in your area, do research. We'll include resources like the ones that Dahlia was mentioning that can help you really dig into the issues in your area, and also think about the ways the different issues intersect. So, for example, like Dahlia was mentioning, economic justice obviously is a huge issue that we care about at PWN and affects people differently in different areas. So thinking about how all the different issues intersect as well. We'll also have some strategies on how you can engage with the candidates, how you can get your issues out there in your stance. So things like bird dogging, meeting with candidates, using social media to make sure you get the issues out there, and other creative ways to make sure that the issues you matter are actually getting coverage in this election. And then last but not least, we'll have a section on getting out the vote. We'll have resources just for how do you even find where your local polling place is and what time it's open. We'll have some resources about knowing your rights in different states, because as Lauren mentioned, the laws are very different in the different states. So in order to help your community really be prepared and make sure no one's blocked from voting, I think, we want you to be able to access these resources to make sure you really feel like you have the knowledge of the law at your disposal when you're going to need it on Election Day. And then finally, we'll have some information about who you can call. There are several national hotlines that have different languages available that you can get assistance with, or if you're helping someone on voting day, we want you to be able to know where to call. And so the toolkit is live. It's actually a bit of a teaser because we only have Part 1 available, which is, I think, the most important thing to be doing right now, making sure you're registered, making sure everyone else is registered, and really finding out what the rules are in your state and locally. So if you go to www.pwn-usa.org/PWN votes, you'll find Part 1 of the toolkit available online. And certainly if you have any questions or feedback or additional resources you want us to include when we put up Parts 2, 3, and 4, please let us know.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you for hitting the ground running and helping to develop the toolkit and also for this presentation. I think everybody's really excited for having these tools available. And like she said, it's available already. It's live on our website, so you guys can access it. Okay, and so now we will open it up to questions to Cammie and all the rest of our awesome presenters for today. I'm going to take everybody mute.
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
Okay. So yeah, if you have a question for any of the presenters, you can chat it into the chat box, or you can press *6 to come off mute and ask them live. That's *6 to unmute your line.
Hi, this is Naima from Ohio. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hey Naima.
Okay, so I have a question. I know that part 2 of the toolkit is not prepared yet, but if you have specific questions on how to find information for your state, is there suggestions around that from any of the candidates? I know that there was a suggestion about, and I wrote it down, and I have a brain fart right now, but on some things to get on. But we're already past the part 1. We're looking for how to look for issues and how to look for candidates and ask those specific questions. So that's where we are right now.
So there are the tools that Lauren mentioned, like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, sorry.
I want to, is this Dahlia?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm curious to hear what you all have to offer.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for that question. And so just to make sure I understand, you're looking, like you're in phase 2, so you're looking for actual questions to ask candidates, like at forums or meetings with community?
Correct. That's what I'm looking for. And we're going to do like an educational session with people from support groups to give them an idea of what to think about when they go to vote. Who are friendly about the issues with women and people living with HIV. So we're looking for information on how to find, we're going to create a fact sheet for people to look at so that they won't go, and whether they vote by mail or go to the polls, they won't go blindly just voting for someone because they'll know the facts about the candidate and where they stand on certain issues.
Totally. No, that makes sense. That's awesome. You guys are so far ahead. That's wonderful. So I just put in the chat box, and I'm sure we can figure out how to get it to you after. There's a free resource that is a candidate questionnaire that could serve kind of like as a base as you develop your own questions. I put it in the chat box, and so it's literally I think what you're hopefully looking for, which is it has kind of background. So let's say you want to ask around ban the box. And so there's a couple paragraphs that has background on ban the box. And as we heard from my fellow presenter say, sometimes we can forget right when we're about to ask the question, what was the question? So this is handy because it's written and it also has some facts there. And then after the facts, it has the sample question that you could ask. And so it's organized into all these different, 3 different areas, like equal opportunity, but really looking at protecting folks, and then economic security, looking at minimum wage and that kind of thing, and then work-family flexibility, looking at paid sick days, making sure that families are protected no matter how they're formed. And so there's questions in there that can hopefully help. And then if you want to adapt them, I would definitely recommend, I'm happy to chat with you more after about how we could add in stats around, I know you mentioned women living with HIV, but how we can make sure that that's also included like in the main question you want to ask.
Hey, Naima. And I'd also add that there are a few websites that you can, if you're looking for specific resources around people living with HIV. I know AIDS United just came out with an interactive voter center, so I think that will have some of the policy issues that you might be looking for as well. And that will be, we'll have links to that in the toolkit. I can actually link it here in the chat box right now.
And I would just say, Naima, that scheduling is really important, because a lot of times I think a good way to be able to ask the candidates questions that you want to have answered would be to schedule a roundtable of your own for people representatives in your area, both the minor ones or the more essential ones. But what you need to do is have to schedule a roundtable or a talk for them to be available at, and that usually takes a little bit of time. So I don't know in your area if it's really, too late to do that or not. But if you schedule your own event and invite the candidates, then you have more control over because a lot of times, even with our best candidates, like I said, like Barbara Lee is a representative from my area. But if you notice, if you go to her events during election time, depending on specifically where she's speaking within her district, she's going to talk about different topics. So if she's in an area where the voters' interest is on crime or interest on that water tank or whatever, then that's what she's going to be talking about. So your chances of getting a question about HIV, even with Barbara Lee, are harder. It's harder to have that question come up. So if it's possible, I suggest setting up your own event.
This is Dahlia. I just want to add. I think setting up your own event is totally key. Thank you, Lauren. And also because maybe we've all been at that candidate forum or something where the same people are always on the mic and they don't look like us who are asking the questions. And so being able to schedule your own, or if not, plan the agenda a little bit so that it's like the first 5 questions will be only from our members, or we'll prioritize women of color. And that's like an internal conversation, but that can always help too to make sure that our issues are first and centered.
Yeah, and especially so you can use some of these tools like the one that Anita just put in the chat box there to find who the candidates are, or contact your county registrar or your elections office to find out who local candidates are. But it might be the case where they might not have information online or anything that really speaks to the issues that you're interested in. So that's where strategies like organizing those events, bird dogging, getting in contact with the candidates can really help illuminate what their stance is on an issue that you care about that you might not be able to find using some of these online tools or just by searching the internet.
They're all great points. Tammy or Pat, did you have anything to add? You chiming in on the chat box as well, too.
I think those are all great ideas. I wouldn't have anything, to add at all. So perfect.
Great. Thank you, guys. Were there any more questions or comments for the presenters? We have a few minutes left. Star 6 to come off mute.
This is Tammy. I guess it just popped into my head. One other resource to see possibly where candidates stand is to go to sign up for their newsletter, and then you can read those and find out, one, where they're going to be. They often post their their campaign stops or community forums in their newsletter, but it also will let you know how they voted or what issues are important to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great idea. Thank you, Tammy. All right. Well, hearing no other questions or comments, I just want to thank you all for joining today, this important conversation, and thank you to our panel of amazing presenters. I certainly learned some things myself today, so it's great. We provided all of our contact information. If there are questions that didn't come up for you right now that you want to follow up with them about after the webinar, and don't forget to check out the toolkit. Part 1 is available on our website, PWNUSA.org, and I think we shared the direct link there. You can also follow us online using the hashtag PWNVote. And we look forward to seeing you online and at the polls, in the streets, everywhere. So thank you all.
Or on the ballot.
Or on the ballot. Yes, that's right. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.